Thursday, February 21. Satan's End-Time Strategy. Revelation chapter 12 verse 17 marks a shift in Satan's strategy as he tries to win the people of the world and even seeks to deceive Christ's faithful followers. Throughout Christian history, Satan has opposed God's work of salvation, primarily by means of subtle compromise within the church and through coercion and persecution from without. History shows that, while successful for many centuries, this strategy was counteracted by the Reformation and the gradual rediscovery of Bible truth by God's people. However, as Satan realizes that his time is running out, he intensifies his efforts and goes to wage war against God's end-time remnant, as we read in Revelation 12:17. His attacks on the remnant will include a large element of deception. Demons working miracles and spiritualistic manifestations will be introduced, as we read in Revelation 16 verse 14. For they are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. This shift in Satan's strategy corresponds to the transition from a historical to an end-time focus, as we read in Matthew 24:24. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. It is significant that the word deceive is used regularly in Revelation chapters 12 to 20 to describe Satan's end-time activities. The word deceive begins Revelation 12:9. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And it concludes with Revelation 20, verse 7 to 10. Now, when the 1,000 years had expired, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. And this is a description of Satan's end-time activities in Revelation. Question: read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 8 to 12, along with Revelation 13 verses 13 and 14 and Revelation 19 verse 20. What is the nature of Satan's end-time deception? 2 Thessalonians 2, 8 to 12. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. And Revelation 13, verses 13 and 14. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. And Revelation 19 verse 20. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Revelation chapter 12 through to chapter 20 portrays Satan endeavouring to deceive the world, as we read in Revelation 12 verse 9, chapter 13 verse 14, chapter 18 verse 23, chapter 19 verse 20, and chapter 20 and verse 8. Revelation 12:9 reads, "So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." And Revelation 13 verse 14, "And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived." And Revelation 18 verse 23, "The light of a lamp shall not shine in you any more, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you any more, for your merchants were the great men of the earth. For by your sorcery all nations were deceived." And Revelation 19 verse 20, "Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who works signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These too were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone." And Revelation 20 verse 8, "And will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea." He used in turn political and religious powers to do his work. Pagan Rome, symbolized by the dragon in Revelation 12 verse 4 and 5, followed by a power symbolized by the sea beast in Revelation 12 verses 6 and 15 and Revelation 13 1-8, and finally a power symbolized by the earth beast in Revelation 13:11. Let's look at those texts. Revelation chapter 12 and verses 4 and 5. Revelation 12, 4 and 5 reads, "His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne." And Revelation 12, verse 6, "Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." And verse 15, "So the serpent spewed out water of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood." And Revelation 13, verses 1-8, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marvelled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon, who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, 'Who is like the beast? Who was able to make war with him?' And he was given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world." And Revelation 13:11, "Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon." Throughout the rest of the book, the members of this satanic triad, paganism, spiritualism, are symbolized by the dragon. Roman Catholicism, symbolized by the sea beast, and apostate Protestantism, symbolized by the lamb-like or earth beast, are inseparably united in opposing God's activities in the world. They work together to deceive people in order to turn them away from God and to get them to side with Satan in the battle of that great day of God Almighty, as we read in Revelation 16, verses 13 and 14. "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons, performing signs, which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. These false religious systems will be destroyed together at the second coming, as we read in Revelation 19:20, while the dragon, symbolizing the devil, who worked through these earthly powers, as we read in Revelation 12 verse 9, will be destroyed at the end of the 1,000 years, as we read in Revelation 20 verse 10. And that reads, "The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night, forever and ever." Revelation shows that the end-time deception will be so great that most people will be led to choose the way of destruction. Jesus talks about that in Matthew 7:13. "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it." So to finish the day, twice in Revelation, a call is made for wisdom and spiritual discernment in order to perceive and withstand the deceptive nature of Satan's end-time activities. Revelation 13 verse 18, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666, and Revelation 17 verse 9. "Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits." What kind of wisdom is in view here? According to James 1:5, how can we obtain that wisdom? "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." What kind of wisdom is in view here, according to James 1:5? How can we obtain that wisdom?